We live in a world where, even if you're smart and hardworking, people will often overlook your ideas or worse, value someone who is half as smart as you. And it's a timeless problem. Let's go back to ancient Rome, where a young man named Cicero dreams of becoming a politician. But since he doesn't come from a noble family and has very few connections, he tries a different path. He becomes what is essentially a lawyer. You know, at the time, it didn't exist as a profession, but if you were accused of a crime, you would hire a skilled speaker to defend you. And Cicero became so popular that it catapulted him to the highest office of the Roman Republic. And I was surprised to learn that he inspired many influential figures in philosophy, politics, and law. So if you want to communicate in a clear and persuasive way, why not learn from the GOAT? Research. Cicero would study people with the same intensity as the great marketers do today. He watched other debates to see what made the crowds cheer or what made them furious. He often asked his friends for feedback on the speeches he was about to give, and he would practice, usually in front of a mirror, until the performance felt effortless. Now, when he was doing the research, he tried to figure out 3 things about his audience: what they feared, what they desired, and what they believed about themselves. For example, the senators feared chaos while they desired prestige and stability. Ordinary Romans, on the other hand, worried about feeding their families and craved both security and entertainment. In fact, those trials became a kind of a public spectacle, a form of entertainment for them. And since Cicero was the best speaker, people already knew him, and that's how he managed to break into politics. In addition, nearly everyone believed in Rome's traditions and in the idea that they were the most civilized people on earth. Now, it's important to understand that researching is not about accuracy, in the sense that they truly are civilized or fair. That doesn't really matter. What matters is what your audience believes about themselves or what they believe about the issue you're arguing. Once you have figured it out, you need to build the narrative. A narrative is how you frame a certain event so you can influence how people think about it. For example, 200 people have lost their jobs. That's a fact. But how you perceive it and present it can differ. You could say, this company is ruthless and only cares about profits. This company is protecting thousands of other jobs by making these cuts. This is proof that the industry itself is collapsing. You have the same fact, but there are 3 different stories and, of course, 3 different reactions. They will be angry at corporate greed, they will be upset but accept that desperate times require desperate measures, they will be scared that there is a broader economic issue. That's why you should always look at an event from different angles. Then, based on your research, pick the angle that might have the biggest impact on both a logical and emotional level. Now, Cicero always tried to pick the most powerful angle, but he relied heavily on framing when the odds were against him. If his client looked guilty or was guilty, he appealed to people's sense of identity or their values. If people felt anxious, he amplified their fears. And if they craved hope, he explained how him or the man he was recommending would make that vision a reality. These weren't some cheap tricks. He framed his argument in a way that made people feel like it was the only natural choice. One of his rivals, Quintilian, said it best. Cicero could make people think they were choosing freely, when in reality, he was pulling them exactly where he wanted. I have created a separate video where I explain this strategy in detail, so the next time you're in a tough conversation or debate, you'll know how to tilt the scales in your favor. It will also help you recognize when you're being deceived or manipulated. Now, after you have picked the narrative, you need to build the arguments to support it, which leads us to the 3rd step: structure. The Romans had a 6-step model for structuring their speeches: opening, background, outline, proof, refutation, and conclusion. Cicero didn't always follow it to the letter because it depended on the situation, but it provided him with a framework to lean on. It helped him remember his arguments and, most importantly, make it easier for the audience to follow along. Now, in today's world, we don't have the time or the people's patience to walk through the steps. That's why I recommend a simpler model that is just as effective. Frame the problem, build your reasons in layers, and close with intensity. You still want to consider their objections, but you can answer them after they raise them. Alright, the first step is framing the problem. It's when you present your view in a short and dramatic way. For example, let's say you are at a town hall meeting and you want the city to fix a dangerous road near your house. If you stand up and complain, you need to fix the road, or why am I paying taxes and stuff like that, it won't have a big impact. Instead, you could frame it differently. I have heard people say that potholes and cracks on the road are annoying. But they are not just annoying, they are life-threatening. Do you see the difference? Instead of framing it as a complaint, we have presented an inconvenience as a dangerous situation. Now, when you present the problem, remember that you're not chasing what's true in the absolute sense. You're choosing the angle that matters to the people in front of you. In this case, you know that people are concerned about the safety of their families, and it is a claim that you can support. But you don't support your claim by throwing facts and evidence like darts in the dark. You layer your reasons one after the other. Here's how you can do it. Start with an undeniable fact. On that stretch of road, there have been over 50 accidents last year. Unsafe roads mean the government has failed its most basic duty, to protect our lives. No parent should get that phone call that their child died on a road that could have been easily fixed. So we shouldn't wait until another family gets that awful phone call. We must fix the road now and make this city a better, safer place to live. And that's how we close, with emotional intensity. So the structure is this: you frame the problem, you present the reasons in layers, fact, value, emotion, and then you close with intensity, because people tend to remember the beginning and the end more vividly. You might stir fear, anger, or pride, or lay a vision for the future. It all depends on your audience and the moment you're in. Now let's move on to the delivery. Cicero used to say that the first, the second, and the third most important element in persuasion is delivery. That's why he paid close attention not only to his tonality, but also to pace and gesture. He adjusted his voice to the emotion he wanted to evoke, much like a skilled actor, but always with the dignity expected of a Roman statesman. When he attacked someone, he started with fire. "How long, 𝐸𝐞𝐿, will you abuse our patience?" It was a sudden, theatrical accusation designed to shock the audience. But when he was defending someone, he often lowered his voice. He would speak as if he was confiding in each judge personally. It wasn't just his voice and tonality, though. Cicero also mastered the strategic use of silence. After a sharp accusation or a hard fact, he would pause deliberately, forcing the audience to fill in the blanks. Now, as we mentioned, he would practice non-stop to match his body language to his message, because Romans, just like most people today, cared as much, if not more, about the performance rather than the content itself. When he accused Catiline, he pointed directly at him, and the gesture, the body language, the tone of voice made the accusation so electrifying that the senators sitting next to him recoiled and shifted away. So, from the research to the content to the delivery, everything needs to be calculated for maximum psychological effect. Handling objections. Earlier I mentioned that you want to consider their objections, but you don't have to include them in your presentation. But sometimes the audience doesn't trust you, or your opponent has a strong objection that you know they are going to use. In these cases, you can gain the upper hand by addressing their concerns and destroying them. Let's modify the previous example. We frame the problem. The potholes and cracks on the road are not just an inconvenience, but a danger. We transition to acknowledging the objection. I know some of you worry this project is too expensive. And yes, it will cost money up front. But here's the truth. Unsafe roads already cost us more every year in lawsuits, hospital bills, and emergency responses. Here we could be more specific, to make ourselves appear more knowledgeable. We want to send the message that we have done our research. And these expenses are nothing compared to the real cost of 3 young people who have lost their lives on this road. Let's act now, because what is at stake is not your budget, it's the safety of our children. In conclusion, whether you are in a conversation, a debate, or creating content, the process is the same. Figure out what moves people, shape the narrative, and practice as much as possible so you can deliver it in a natural, impactful way. If you master these tools, you'll have a massive advantage over 99% of people who are just saying whatever comes into their minds. Now, if you want to learn more about Cicero, check out selected political speeches and on the ideal orator. And don't forget to watch the next video where I break down the 6 narratives that helped Cicero win impossible cases.